I'd like to share some of these insights that it might be useful to someone in some situation. Something about trying to research into just the misuse of the behavioral sciences seems to be clearing up my thoughts about other things. And, one thing I was never understood, and then this isn't like a fucking conspiracy, this is just a matter of what a psychiatrist can do when they're committed to, denying that abuse took place in someone's childhood. You know, one thing I never understood is that what happened is I had when I started having these seizures, and I later found out that it was from from trauma, traumatic stress. Um, I did dumb idea, but at the time I didn't realize what had happened with my family, and I went home, when I got there and realized I didn't want to be with my family, and I wanted to go back to New Orleans. Well, right then is when the flood happened. That's in 2006, and my house was underwater, so I really couldn't go anywhere, and the place is underwater. Now, so I was stuck back at 27 in the home with my elderly parents. And this is the time when I was seeing that psychiatrist. I'd only been seeing him to get pills like that. I had no relationship with him. But this is the time that my father it's something that is the first time I realized he was capable of this, which is that very ill. The man was ill, and he went and he was harassing my psychiatrist to see if he could get. He wanted to know what I was saying in therapy, and he said he couldn't tell him, but he thought maybe he could meet with his colleague and talk about his son, and the two doctors would share information, and okay. But what happened is, so and at that time he clearly had to come into that office and pretending two things. One, that he was a different person, and this is when I learned about this as if personality, literally pretending he was a different person. But believe it or not, also all day long, since I was in the house, he was putting on this fake routine as if he was a different person, and belligerently telling me that if I thought he had been any different at any time, that this was something that I had imagined, that he had always been the way he was right then. And say, how could someone believe that? But he was doing it, and he was also telling the doctor, apparently, that he and I did not have a relationship, and he wanted to know me better, which is couldn't be further from the truth. Not only have we been in a claustrophobic relationship, but an abusive one up to 27, and people had tried to tell me, just even your father's ill, and I didn't want to hear him. I had a roommate who said, listen man, this is sick the way he calls you and what he says, but I didn't want to see it. But he was actually claiming to the doctor apparently that we didn't know each other that well, and then he was saying that to me too. He was posing as a different person and saying, I want to get to know you. I mean, it was really freaky. But what happened then in the therapy, I didn't know what to tell the therapist about this, and I didn't tell him much of anything, but he was doing a kind of aggressive questioning. And whatever happened, I didn't fully understand, but when I finally realized I couldn't go back to New Orleans and got a place in New York outside my parents' house in, downtown. And I sat on the floor of that apartment with those seizures, and the thing is that my mind was totally disintegrating. But one thing I realized that I couldn't quite understand is that it seemed like whatever the doctor was doing and whatever had happened at home, that it seemed to have taken down what adult personality I thought was there, which largely I think maybe I was playing a bit of a role, maybe in a way, but it stripped down to some core personality that I realized that I had regressed, or that I was essentially 9 years old. I mean, I knew how I felt, I knew the state I was in, and I said, this is crazy. I don't know what happened, what they did to me, And that I was essentially discovered that I was in a state of being 9 years old, and that I couldn't get back any other kind of thing. And, I certainly didn't tell the doctor that. But one thing that I learned later, but what he kept telling me, is that he kept telling me, because I went and got sober at that point, because I wanted to deal with this. But he kept telling me, over and over and over and over again, what was happening to me. He said that when you use drugs and alcohol, you see, you're in suspended animation. It's as though you don't mature that whole time. And the thing is, I didn't tell him that I realized I was 9 years old, And I said, I thought to myself, well, first of all, I didn't start abusing alcohol that way, or abusing it or anything until I was 22. But I didn't even start drinking or anything until I was 16. I could not really understand what they had done that I was, I felt I really knew I was a little kid all of a sudden and couldn't figure out what happened to the previous personality. But he kept telling me over and over, you were in suspended animation. I mean, he said it thousands of times. And I came to really feel that I had done this to myself, that this was from drugs and alcohol. And I did wonder all the time, like, nah, man, but when people abuse drugs and alcohol till they're 50. I mean, they don't come off it and they're like a little boy. I mean, they regressed. I mean, this doesn't make any sense, but I just felt like this is my fault this whole time. I wasn't really a man, and I was a little kid the whole time and underneath the alcohol, and he really had me feeling that way. But also I couldn't fully understand why I had gotten so traumatized by that final operation, that is that they were pulling the stunt on me, and and that I've been under this stress. I didn't realize my father was ill. But at the same time, I said, how does it end up that I'm basically regressed to 9 years old? And also I felt traumatized in a way. I said, man, how could they have done something? I mean, I just didn't know what was done to me. Well, the thing is, I did learn later about what they call adult onset trauma. And what I realized that happened is, it's true, of course. I didn't start drinking until I was 16, and I certainly didn't start abusing alcohol until I was 22. Now, but what happened is, that what had gotten triggered by the doctor and what my father was trying to do, is it did apparently trigger the childhood trauma from the abuse when I was young, and most of which started when I was about 9, 10 years old. And that I hadn't, and that although I hadn't entirely remembered it, I mean, I remembered it, but I don't remember. I remember how ill my father was. But the main thing is, right, what happened is, that whole experience and everything, what happened is, that's what they call adult onset trauma. That is to say, an adult, like for example, who goes through a sort of traumatic experience, if it re-triggers a childhood trauma that is locked in there, they may be confused as to why they are so traumatized. I mean, they know they are, but they don't. What do you say? I'm really traumatized. And I kept having to say, God, but he just kept saying, no, I see you were in suspended animations, it's because you're drinking, And I believed that for a long time. And what I realize now is that he triggered out in this game my father played, which is very sick, and to pretend he's a different person and all that stuff. And that's when the behaviors that I call stalking started, which is he attempted to continuously contact me. Not that he wasn't doing it before, but now he was trying to contact me with his new personality, and let's pretend he's a different person. And if I didn't want to go along, he became rageful. But the thing is, what they had done is they triggered out all that childhood trauma from when I was 9, 10 years old. And, that's adult onset trauma. But he really had me, I mean, the amount of times he said, I really thought I did that to myself with drugs and alcohol, and it didn't make sense, but I felt so shameful, like, God damn, like, all that time I was drinking, I mean, I was like really just a little boy on the inside, and I wasn't even a man I thought I was, but I thought, Jesus Christ, I work at a corporation, and I had girlfriends, and I lived down in New Orleans, working in restaurants. I mean, I was just 9 years old that whole time, but yeah, I guess it was drugs and alcohol, dude. I was just a child, And he really had me thinking that. And the thing is, that's the thing, when someone is committed to doing that, and when they don't realize that they may be a psychopath gaslighting their psychiatrist, and that was a lie, that we didn't have a relationship, that this was a game he was playing to redo the childhood or something. I mean, the damage is incredible, because it's only recently that I've understood that that's not true. That's not true at all. And it's true that I did just stunt my emotional growth in a lot of ways starting from 22 on, and that's true. But no. I wasn't 9 years old, because I wouldn't have been, promoted at my corporation. I wouldn't have. I mean, that's just not true what he was saying. And that's how I lost myself. I lost myself, and it's coming back. But man, people who are committed to denying abuse and don't realize what an elderly psychopath might be doing. I mean, it's only real now because I got out of it. But if I had stayed in psychiatry, none of this would be real for me. I mean, they were just, I mean, it was just going to keep going. And they wouldn't let me out of the relationship. And this man was committed to making sure I did not remember the abuse from when I was young. Which, by the way, is an interesting thing that I'm saying that one reason I didn't have anything to say about it is that, look, you know, when you got an elderly man with a rage problem and all that stuff, there's no specific incident of being beaten or sexually molested or anything. There's just an incredible amount of hatred and rage and explosive rage directed at like a sensitive little kid. I mean, it's not anything that you would remember the incident or anything. But that's what was set that off, where I couldn't believe just how is it that I'm this traumatized and regressed by what's been happening since I got out of college. And even if they did pull this gaslighting stunt, I mean, how is it that this has occurred? And what it did is that whole time I had not been in touch with this kid inside myself that fully remembered all that abuse. And I mean, when you got a psychiatrist and all that that's committed to that shit. But see, one of the things is he also used that to say that there was a certain, really almost convinced me that perhaps I was immature in my fear of my father or wanting to get away from it and everything. And let me tell you something. All the way up to the end, that guy was threatening me. And I did finally challenge him and threaten him. And you know something, well, his reaction, that man was a psychopath. I mean, 33 years old, I bum rushed this guy. He was sitting in his chair, he's an old man. And I put my finger in his chest and I fucking shouted at him and I told him like, you're too old to harm me now, man. And everything. And you know, he's the kind of guy, believe it or not, he found me later and he said that I should never make the mistake of thinking he'll ever be too old to hurt somebody. That's the kind of person that was. But they really had me convinced that there was some lack of maturity on my part, that I didn't understand him or anything. And none of that's true. I understood him so well that I didn't listen to my own friends who said, your father's ill, he's a mean old man and this isn't a nice man. And God, I mean, a psychiatrist who is, and the reason I didn't know that my father had known him from before, had set this up, where one of the reasons is that this guy was an expert in suicide. While I was seeing him, my father had always tried to build up the perception that his son was suicidal. And that was never true, but he'd been working on that for years. And what it is, you know, that's projective identification. We were always scared he'd kill himself. The way you just thought this guy would kill himself if we tell him what we think of him, and or he'll kill one of us. And now he projected that on me. But it's funny is they almost made it come true, because by the end, yeah, he did almost push me into suicide. And they knew they were doing it, because he even asked me, you haven't wanted to commit suicide lately, have you? Oh no, not me. But because I don't want to get locked up. But man, you know, what they can do is really remarkable. And I just want to make a video about it.